Hey, this is Double R. I wanted to tell you that Anchor by Spotify is a great and easy way to make a podcast with everything you need and all in one place. Anchor has the tools to allow you to record, edit your podcast straight from your phone or your computer. When hosting with Anchor, you can distribute your podcast to all listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Best of all, it's totally free. So go down the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. This is the Let's Roll Podcast with your host, Double R. What's up, everybody? It's your boy, Double R here. This is the Let's Roll Podcast. As always, I'm the host that rolls the most. And in this episode, I want to talk about why the world's not made for me. Or I'm not made for the world. Either way you look at it, it's messed up. In this episode, I discuss the obstacles that are in my way when I'm out in the world. This and much more right after this. So being disabled, from the get-go, there's obstacles put in your way. Now, as we all know, I have osteogenesis imperfecta. I was born with it, so I was disabled from the beginning. And my particular disability, I'm not able to walk. Or I say I'm not able to walk. I learned to walk, but I didn't find it safe. So I don't walk. So from the time I was in elementary, I think the first couple of years I was in elementary, I went to school in a stroller. And then I got my first wheelchair. And ever since then, I've used a wheelchair to get around in public. So I started off this episode by saying the world's not made for me, or I'm not made for the world. And what I mean by that, and that's a phrase that most people with a disability that have to basically really have to use, I'll say wheelchairs or a cane, crutches, scooters, etc. When we say the world's not made for us, there's obstacles that get in our way. And I have come across obstacles. Sometimes I can adapt to them, sometimes I can't. But when I say the world's not made for me, it's more about the everyday doing things. I remember when I started driving, the first time I had to, go pump my own gas, and the struggles that I personally went through. The gas pump was higher than I could almost reach. I struggled to reach the gas pump. I struggled to, put the nozzle in the car at first. It's things that are not made at the height that I need them. Or you go into a store and the store is so cram-packed with stuff, even down the aisles and stuff. Sometimes it's hard to get around the store. I have literally wanted to go into stores and started to go in and look and went, I can't go through here. I would literally tear up this place. The other things that I come across is sometimes restaurants, they're not big enough or not designed in the way to allow wheelchairs to move around freely. Fortunately, a long time ago, a group of disabled people came together and went and fought the government and got the ADA established to where it would require buildings in new construction and all that to be ADA approved, that they're accessible. But even when they're accessible, there are times that they're still not accessible for me. Like each individual is different. Each individual has, each person that's disabled has a different ability than the other person. And I give you an example. I have a friend that lives with us. He has the same thing I have, but his arms are longer than mine. And his particular wheelchair sits lower, so he can reach things off the ground. He's a lot stronger than I am, so he can pick a lot of things up easily. And I have little short arms, and my wheelchair sits real high, so I can't reach down to the ground. I do have what I call a grabber, and I grab things, but sometimes I'm not able to grab what I need with a grabber. So we're all built different. So he might be able to go into a restroom and use it just okay, no problem. I might go into the restroom, even though it's big enough, and it has all the grab handles and all that. Sometimes they're just not in the places that I need them. So even when things are accessible, they're still an obstacle that we have to deal with. The other day, I went to Home Depot, and for the most part, I don't really ever say anything about handicap parking, about somebody parking in it that shouldn't be parked in it, or anything like that. I very rarely do. I mean, unless it's really affecting me directly, I'm not going to really say anything. I don't, whatever. Well, this particular day that I went to Home Depot, I was parking, and I looked over at this other parking spot, this other van-accessible handicapped parking spot. And the side that most people that have vans, now I do know that you can get out on the passenger side on some vans, and then some vans you get out of the very back. But most vans you get out on the passenger side. Well, this particular parking spot, that side was striped off, like, for people not to park there. And it was not the very end of the parking lot as far as from the store, but it was at the very end at the front of the store where handicap parking is. But in the area that's striped off, so nothing will block, them getting out, are Home Depot's lawnmowers or tractors or whatever you want to call them, mowers. And they're chained up so nobody can take them, and they're advertising them right there. And I just kind of stopped and I looked and I went, that bothers me. That's taking away a parking place from somebody that might need it, and they got their damn, mowers in the way. And to me, they should know better. I mean, yes, it's a private property. It's not public, but if the law requires you to have handicap spacing and it be available, blah, 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 then you shouldn't be blocking it. So I went inside, I shopped, and when I was coming out, I tried to talk to a manager. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to talk to a manager, but I talked to what we call a cashier manager. And she when I told her what I was wanting to talk about, she says, let me go out there with you and take a picture. So she went outside and took a picture, and we sat out there and talked, and she's like, I'm going to let them know. This can't be, this is not right. And she goes, my husband's disabled, so this really bothers me too. So that's the only time I really said anything, and I noticed things like that. Going to a theater, like a movie theater, most handicap seating is down at the bottom, not necessarily right up front, but not. Sometimes it's not far enough back. It seems like you're still right up front. I don't mind it too much, but on occasion there are some theaters that are, we'll call it 2-story, where they have an elevator for you to go to the top, and there's handicap seating up there too. But a lot of times they're not like that, and they kind of. I mean, I'm glad that there's spaces for me, but I wish there was a way that I could go. I could be either at the top or down at the bottom, or maybe even have something right in the middle. I don't know. Going back to the handicap parking, my idea was, and I've said it in my other episode, like spread the handicap spaces throughout the parking lot. Don't have them all right up at front. Just have some in the middle, have some at the end. Just kind of spread them out. Because for me, I'm in a power chair. Like it's no big deal for me to roll from way at the end of the parking lot all the way up to the store. So going back to like going to a store, like I go to this GameStop that's close by me, and it's a small one, man. It's one of those, real small ones, and they pack that store with all kinds of stuff. And I make a joke with the manager that I'm kind of friends with. I'm like, I'm gonna wreck this place if I come in here. And he kind of laughs and he goes, man, I'll move whatever you need. Like if you need me to move it out of the way, I'll move it out of the way. And he does. I mean, I don't try to go all the way in there a lot of times, just because I know there's a lot of areas that it's kind of like going one way in and not being able to come back out type situation. So there's challenges in this world, Here's another one, and it's a big complaint that I have. I go online to buy tickets to go to a concert, and sometimes I think they make it so difficult, in my opinion, for me to simply buy handicap accessible seating. and it's frustrating. And sometimes I just give up. Like, man, I'm not gonna waste my time, because in some cases you got to put in there, hey, I want accessible seating, blah blah blah, and then they'll call you back and say, okay, what seating do you want? Why can't you just have it online? Like movie theaters don't have that problem. Click on the handicap seating spot. Oh, I want that one right there. Boom, done. But for some reason, all of these venues, they just make it too difficult to buy tickets. What are some other challenges? Usually it's just challenges about getting around, not having ramps or not having elevators or, the space is too small, cramped. I mean, that's, for me, that's what it is. I went to go vote, and I'm going to talk about that in an episode later this year. But basically, I went to vote, and the place I went to vote wasn't accessible. I couldn't go in and vote. And so, it's just little things like that, in this world, it's really hard to get around. It's just again, it's not made for me. A lot of times I think that businesses and stuff, like, don't really think about it until we show up. And then when we show up at the door and they're like, oh, blah, blah, blah. Man, one of the worst stores I go to a lot, as far as having big time obstacles in the way, is Dollar Tree. Now, it all depends on what Dollar Tree you go to and what area, what part of town you go in. But for the most part, Dollar Trees are kept terrible. It's just, between the customers and the employees that just don't care. There's just stuff always in the way. They're always stocking stuff. They always got empty boxes, and then, customers, just mess up everything and stuff's on the floor and blah, blah, blah. And, sometimes I'm just like, man, I hate coming in here, but I go in there because some of the stuff I want is cheap and easy to get. So I go in there. Speaking of shopping, the other obstacles we have is not being able to reach things, not that I think that all stores should make it to where I can reach everything, but I will say this. I do wish that a lot of stores would have Pacific employees. Like if I go into Walmart and I say, hey, I need to get some groceries, and can I get somebody to go around and help me get them? But they have those people that it wouldn't take forever for them to find somebody. Like they specifically have somebody. Maybe it's a cashier, and if she's not cashiering, they could just go over and say, hey, I need you to help this customer. Whatever that might be, just have specific people to do that. Another thing that is hard to do, especially when you're disabled, me and Tony talked about this in an episode briefly, but it's about traveling and going to different places. And, my deal was always, I don't know if I can get around where we're going. I don't, obviously I can't do everything, but what can I do and what can I not do? I mentioned in that episode that, when me and my ex-wife got married, we went to Las Vegas for our honeymoon. Well, the reasoning for that was, it was easy to go there because we could stay on the Strip. The Strip had access to all the hotels, so we had all kinds of different entertainment, and all the hotels were accessible and easy to get to. I didn't have to drive, but I wouldn't be able to drive because we were flying. So once I got there, I was pretty much stuck where we were. My ex-wife was legally blind, so she couldn't drive. So we wouldn't have any kind of transportation of our own. Yes, could we got a taxi or a limo or Uber or something like that? Yeah, but that's more extra expense. So we chose Vegas just to be able to be centrally kind of located on the Strip and had all those places to go and see. Less driving, we could get around real easy. But let's say I want to go, I don't know, like I brought up going on a cruise. The cruise itself is going to be accessible for the most part, from what I understand. But once you go on that cruise and you go all of these stops and stop at these ports to get off to go visit whatever places you are going to, how accessible are they? What can I go do? So those are things that when a person with a disability has to think about, like, what am I able to do? Where can I go? For me, when I was younger, it probably wouldn't have been that big of a deal because I was smaller, younger, lighter, wasn't as heavy. Somebody could pick me up, carry me, whatever, get me around those obstacles. But now that I'm older, heavier, I'm in a bigger, heavier wheelchair, we don't have those options anymore. Like when I say, going back, when I said that people with disabilities are even different from each other and have different abilities than others. I have another friend, which you heard her on the podcast, Paula. Well, Paula's smaller, she's lighter, she's more mobile than I am. And as long as she has somebody around with her that is physically able to pick her up and carry her and blah, 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 she can get around those obstacles a lot easier than I could. And she's more willing to go travel and do things than I am because I don't want to deal with those obstacles. Number one, the last time I flew on the plane was going to Baltimore to a OI convention. For people that don't know what that OI is, that's Osteogenesis Imperfecta National Conference or Convention. Just a conference. And it was in Baltimore. And I got on a plane with my mom and we flew. And the only reason I don't want to fly again, not because I'm scared, definitely not scared of flying, but I'm more scared of my wheelchair getting messed up and the obstacle and the struggle to get on and off the plane. Yes, there are people there to help me get off and on, but it's just a pain. It's just, with me personally, and I'm just assuming this even with Paula or even Izzy, which you've heard him on the podcast. They both have OI, both are disabled, both have wheelchairs, but I'm assuming for all three of us, if we get on a plane, or we get on a bus, or we get on a train, we're pretty much stuck in that seat until we get to our destination. We can't get up and go to the bathroom. And we can't do a lot of things just because we don't have the ability to move around. So even traveling sometimes is not built for us. Some are more willing to do it than others, and I'm just not one of them. If I'm going to travel somewhere, if I can't drive there, then I'm probably not going. And then the nightmare of having your wheelchair or your devices that you use get damaged because of the flight or the airline, that's just a nightmare in itself. And going back to Baltimore, my friend Ed was going. He was in a power chair, and they screwed up his power chair. And the airline screwed it up. So he temporarily had to use a loaner chair from a company that the airline called. And then the airline tried to fix his chair as best they could, but didn't fix it totally. And so he fought with them on that. And just the thought of not being able to use your own chair that you're used to and stuff just because it got damaged because of the non-respect of the equipment being thrown around, or somebody picking it up thinking they're He-Man and realize they can't, and drop it and break it. It's just those kind of things that get me. And then you have along the lines of traveling, you have, okay, is the hotel accessible? Is the bathroom in the hotel room accessible? For me, I don't like showers, so I prefer a bathroom that's accessible for me to get in there with my chair and a bathtub, But even then, when I have a bathtub, I still have to have somebody that's either with me or somebody able to, get the water turned on for me or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Because sometimes that's not even accessible for someone with a disability. So there's a lot of things that are accessible and there's a lot of things that are not. And it just it's a reality that reality hits you in the face when you realize, hey, this world's not made for me. And with that being said, as always, until next time, let's roll.
Hey, this is T. Rich, and you listen to the Let's Roll podcast with Double R. Make sure you follow us on all social media. Find the links in the description below or at theletsrollpodcast.com.